Welcome to Chromecast. Check it out. I'm Sam Major, Chief Commercial Officer of Krome Technologies. I'm joined by a new face, Mr. Daniel Turner, or Dan Turner, sorry, our new CISO.
Hi Sam, lovely to be here.
So Dan joined us, well actually Dan has known us for many years. I think you've been working with us for 7 or 8 years on the client side of the fence, and
That's
now
correct.
Decided to chuck it in with us with the Chromies as our new CISO. Dan has vast amounts of experience in that position, in security in general, and I'm sure that will come to shine, as it were, in some of the podcasts and demos we're going to do. But today, and I have to try and remember this, Dan, because it's a long intro, we're talking about 802.1x for both wired and wireless security, but also network-level penetration testing.
That is correct. Absolutely.
Perfect. If you can talk us through, as is the standard, as you will come to learn, the kind of 3 things we're going to go through today.
Sure. So first we're going to cover 802.1x kind of more broadly as a standard rather than tied to a specific vendor. Then we're going to do a quick wireless kind of security test and a demo of how someone may or may not break in. And then finally, we'll have a quick chat about security maturity and the CISO services we're planning to offer.
Perfect. Let's jump, I guess, right at the top then, around 802.1x.
Sure. So 802.1x I like to describe as more port-based security rather than anything kind of more nebulous than that. Simply put, if someone plugs a cable into most networks, most LANs, they will just connect to the network and be able to see everything there. With 802.1x, you get a little bit of authentication on that. So there's a certificate on the device. It communicates with the server internally to authenticate that person onto the network. If they don't have that certificate, then they'll just be pushed to either a VLAN that just has internet access and can see nothing else, or just won't be allowed to connect at all. There's various options there. Over Wi-Fi, broadly the same. You just don't need that initial password to connect to the Wi-Fi network as perhaps you're used to at home. And instead, that certificate will be handled by the machine and that communication will be done for you. Interesting.
So for us with our guest, where's the little thing? It's usually around here with our little password thing for our guest network. Doesn't exist in that 802.1x world?
Correct. So the guest network is a kind of traditional pre-shared password. You type in the password, you connect to the network, all is well. The corporate network we have here is using 802.1x. So when your machine or my machine or corporate machine connects to it, an exchange happens, a handshake is achieved, it connects to the network internally. If I was to bring my personal laptop here and try and connect to that network, the handshake would fail as it doesn't have that certificate, and I would be put onto an internet-only VLAN, not being able to see anything internal to Krome.
Okay, so based on that, I guess the assumption usually has been that 802.1x is primarily for Wi-Fi, but actually what we're saying here is it encompasses the LAN as well.
Yeah, that's correct. It is used on Wi-Fi, including here at Krome, quite widely, but it is applicable to pretty much any network that can be found in your common business. That includes a LAN cable into the wall, normal Ethernet, and into switches as well.
Okay, so the question there is what's required?
So normally there's 3 things. There is what's called the supplicant that exists on the device. That's basically the thing that responds. In most cases, that's going to be built into your operating system, and you won't need anything else there. Some exceptions to that, like Linux servers and that kind of thing. The second thing will be something to pass that authentication. Normally in these scenarios, that's either a switch or a wireless AP, getting that information and forward it on somewhere to authenticate you.
Okay.
And finally, you'll need that authentication server itself. In our case, that's normally Radius, from the Microsoft stack, various options there, but it can be other things too, and there are some options there.
Okay, and then I guess final question on that before we jump into a demo is how easy is that for people to set up?
If you already have a reasonable corporate Wi-Fi estate and a corporate network set up with managed switches and the like, then it's very reasonably simple, a few steps in a couple of days, plus the provision of a server to actually do the authentication for you. Certainly when it comes to Krome, we offer that service to all of our clients, including where I just was. We use that service extensively and we're very, very happy with it for a long time. And I believe I then helped you force it into some of your other clients as a contractor at that point, didn't I?
You have indeed. You have indeed. Pumping our tyres there, Dan. Well done. Probably about the right time we jump into a bit of a demo. So let's see what you can do as far as, I guess, testing some security around that whole kind of wireless and LAN-based.
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect.
So then, a very quick practical demonstration of some Wi-Fi attacks, or one Wi-Fi attack, and we'll talk about a couple of others. 802.1x does solve the ones we talk about, as well as the one we're going to show. However, we only have time to show one, so a quick word on the others. You join me here on the probe screen of a small device called a Wi-Fi Pineapple, currently located within one of our offices. And what this is doing entirely passively is listening for devices around it, attempting to connect to Wi-Fi access points that they've seen in the past that they have stored. If you didn't know, the way a lot of devices connect to Wi-Fi is by effectively shouting out the name of the network as they go around, and if that network exists, replies to it and says hello, then the device will connect, and then you have your internet access as normal. Obviously, during that process, a password is exchanged in what we call a handshake. That will become relevant a little bit later. One of the attacks that we could do is to simply reply to all of the devices shouting for Wi-Fi access points and just say, yep, I am Krome, and hopefully the device would then connect to us, it would send us the password, and then we can use that as part of the handshake to log in to the Wi-Fi network later on. There are also other attacks called an evil twin, where we intentionally make a duplicate of the Wi-Fi access point that device is, looking for, and have it send us the credentials that way. We're going to do neither of those in this demo. We're going to do a slightly more forceful one. So in the office, we've set up a kind of a Chromecast test network with just a password securing it that we're going to use for this test. There's also a small mobile device in the office that's connected to it, and that's the device I'm going to be targeting, both located within our offices. So on my other screen, I'm going to issue a deauth to that device. So I'm going to force it to disconnect by effectively resetting its connection. Then when it reconnects, this device that we're currently logged into via the web UI is configured to try and capture the handshake going towards that access point that we created. So on my other screen now, I'm going to issue that deauth command, and we'll give it a couple of seconds here to run. And then what we'll do is we'll jump over to the terminal for the Wi-Fi pineapple over SSH. Get rid of this. Hopefully we will see here there is now a handshakes folder created. We're just going to look inside there, see if we've got anything. We certainly do. A few files in there, which is what we're looking for. We're looking for the PCAPs, of course. So what we can do now is we can exfiltrate them using the exfil command up to the web UI where I can then get them. Like this, and we'll take all of them. It will now run the tool really quick, and up they will go. So we'll now see that here, 4 seconds ago when we just run that, is a new PCAP. I'm going to quickly download these. I'm going to move them into a small test Linux box, and then you will join me again for the next step. Okay, so you join me in my little test Linux box now, and if I just list the contents of the directory we are in, you can see here that we have a Chromecast demo sitting here that I prepared earlier, which is the same capture from the web UI. Now, how are we going to sort this out, you may ask? Well, in that file, if we just list the contents again, and we look at the contents of that file, it's going to be a massive mess. That there's going to be hash information in there, but we don't need to worry too much about the detail of that. We're going to use a program called Hashcat to do the cracking. Hashcat's a very common program for password cracking of various descriptions, but it can also do Wi-Fi keys, which is what we're going to use it for today. The problem is we're going to need to tell Hashcat how to guess, or what to guess. Now, a lot of people use word lists for this. There's a very popular word list called rocku.txt that comes bundled with Kali Linux, but we're going to do something a little bit more targeted to the business that we're looking at. So, like most businesses, Krome has a website. Here's the current website. And most companies like to speak a lot about the things they do on their website. So we're going to take advantage of that to try and capture some relevant words and phrases that the company may use, some of the technologies they use, some of the staff, that kind of thing, anything we can find to make our word list. So let's go and do that. Cool is a nice little, Seal, I don't know how to say that to be honest, is a wonderful little utility that allows you to scrape a website for words and generate a word list. We're going to use that. We're going to go a depth of 2, that means it will follow 2 layers worth of links. We're going to make every single word it collects lowercase. We're going to allow words with numbers. And finally, we are going to write that to a file that we will call words.txt. Then, as you may expect, we will need to tell it what to target, which is going to be Krome. It should go without saying that you should never run tools like this against any website you don't own or have explicit permission to run them against. Cool does, in my default configuration, only target that website, so if there's a link to YouTube, it won't go there and start doing things. It will try and stay on the original URL you give it. So with all of that config done, we're going to run this command, and off it will go and start generating words and writing them to that word list. I'm going to pause the recording here, and you'll join me again when this runs, because it does take a minute or two. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes, and the command's now completed. So if we list the contents of the words we're in, we now have our words.txt. Now if we cat that, it will have a hell of a lot of words in it, which we could probably scroll up for a very long time, and each line will just be one word that we found from that website. So, clear that. We're now going to process that a little bit, just to make sure we have exactly what we need. So we're going to cat words.txt again, and we're going to feed it into a little utility called unique, which is going to just make sure there is only one copy of every single word in that list, because we don't need any extra duplicates in there, which will take longer during the cracking process. And then we'll make that into a word list.txt. Off it goes, and then we'll see the word list.txt. And if we just slowly scroll through that word list, if I could type, there we go. As we go down, you'll see that there are Cool does a reasonably good job of keeping one copy of each word in there anyway. However, here we'll see that there is only one copy of everything, and there will be thousands and thousands of words in there. So our next step is to actually launch Hashcat to start cracking it. Now, this computer is a work machine. It doesn't have a GPU in it, nor does it have a particularly strong processor. So I'm going to start it here. I'll pause the video, leave it running, and I will either come back when it gets to the end of our word list, or I will move it to a more powerful computer I have near me to finish that off, and then show the results over here, depending on how long this is going to take. We're going to be running Hashcat without additional rules that will manipulate the word list to put a capital at the front, put numbers on the end, change numbers for letters or punctuation, those kind of manipulators. That will obviously, for each one of those you do, it will have to test each word in that list multiple times, so that obviously increases exponentially. In this case, I don't know exactly what the password to this Wi-Fi is, but I have told them to keep it simple enough so that this demonstration won't take too long. So let's construct the hashcat command. We'll start off by calling hashcat. And then what we'll do is we'll set some parameters. If you're interested in exactly what these parameters are, then you can look at the hashcat documentation. I always recommend not just copying someone else's command. Please take your time, go through it, and understand what you're doing. We're going to write an output file of password.txt for any passwords that we do recover. We're going to set the type of hash that we're working with as 2200 again. This is all in the hashcat documentation for exactly what numbers mean which hashes. In this case, this is the one relating to Wi-Fi keys. We are then going to reference the file we want, which is our hash, and then we're going to mention the word list that we generated. So we'll send this off now. Off it will go, and then we'll see it flies through the list, and in this case we recovered 0 passwords. So unfortunately the custom word list wasn't what we wanted in here. What we could do is try the ROCU list, or we could do a deeper generation of the word list. So I'm now going to pause the video, we're going to grab more data from the website, and we're going to come back with more words. So you join me back following a bit more word list generation. And as you can see here, if I cat our word list, there are now many, many more words in it. Some generated from the ROCU. I'll stop that because that's horrible. Some of them from the ROCU list, available on the internet and on Kali Linux distributions. And some of them, a deeper scan of the Krome website was performed. So hopefully within here, we will have what we're looking for. So I will go back to our previous command for hashcat, and we will run it again and send it off. Again, if this looks like it's going to take a long time, I will move it to a faster server, and I will come back with the results for you. As this machine, very, very corporate machine, doesn't really have the oomph to do this cracking quickly. So off it goes. and I can hit S here to generate some stuff so we can see what it's doing. We can see here the amount of rejected passwords. The progress it has is about 1%, 2% here. This is the line we're looking at for progress, and each time I push S, it will refresh, and here we'll see more progress again. And this will keep going until it's finally finished the word list. See the hash mode that we're using at here? This is the type that 2200 set in our previous example. So I'm going to pause the video again, and I will join you when this process finishes. So I ended up moving this onto a little bit of a faster machine just to complete the process, and then I copied over the files back. If you can remember, we were outputting to password.txt with any results we found, and if I ls this directory, we'll see now that we have our password.txt file there. And if I cat out the password.txt, we can see what the wonderful text at Krome set the password to be for our Wi-Fi. And as we can see, the password was Krome demo Wi-Fi. Now what we could do with that, this was done entirely offline, so aside from that initial deauth to collect the hash, no one would be any the wiser that this attack was going on in the background, no matter how long it took. We steal the password or the handshake even at one point in time. We then do everything else offline, and no one's any the wiser until we come back with our password. And of course, it should go without saying that 802.1x bypasses this attack, because although there is still a handshake performed with the router, there is no actual password contained in that. All that's contained is a certificate exchange or a set of encrypted credentials, which are then validated not by the handshake itself, but by a separate server, normally Radius. In the case of the Krome deployments, will verify it in the background. So even if we had the full handshake, even if we capture it, we have no way of knowing when we've got the correct password or not. I hope this has been a useful demo. Apologies, it's a bit brief. There is a lot more I would have loved to have shown you. I would love to have talked through some of the evil twin attacks. I would love to go through some recon scanning. This demo was meant to be 5 minutes. It's already 12. So I'm going to leave you here. Any questions, please do get in touch. The guys at Krome and I will be happy to help you. Hope you've enjoyed the demo. Back to the podcast.
Very interesting demo. It's always worrying to see how some of your skill set can quite easily gain access, gain control, etc., etc. How does 802.1x resolve that?
Sure. So as a blanket statement, it's mostly just because with that layer of certificate authentication, as something connects, there is kind of a handshake between the two devices. Where that certificate is passed forward, there is a challenge and response that authenticates you to a network. In the case where users are connecting to a rogue access point, and we kind of try and harvest credentials like that, we may get their domain credentials, but we will never get the certificate. So if we then try and connect after, best case, we don't connect at all. Worst case, if we do connect to something, it will be an internet-only VLAN with nothing else on it.
Okay. So you can do no harm at that point, but I know I'm right in saying this, but I'll feed you this line anyway. Obviously, 802.1x there is not the panacea that resolves all our security woes. There is still other ways, ways of entry, threat vectors, etc. people do need to consider. Not
even remotely close. As with all security controls, you're just trying to make it that little bit harder, and maybe in some cases putting it slightly beyond the skill set of the attacker that's trying you at that time, and then move on to an easier target. That's normally the goal. There's no one control that's ever perfect, and quite often there's no multiple controls that are ever perfect.
Okay, but in a kind of what does good look like, what services, what solutions would you layer? Because obviously doing 802.1x is one thing. Other things as a CISO, you go, here's are the things you need to be considering or doing. Ultimately, as you said, right, is to make it so if someone tries to push the door open, hey, I found it's locked. I'll shuffle down the road and find one that's open, right? So, but how many locks and bits and pieces do we need to put on? What can we do sensibly, in your position, in your opinion, that makes us that difficult target?
Sure. Let's go down the stack starting from 802.1x. So 802.1x, as we've discussed.
Yep.
Then some kind of network monitoring. In my old company, we use Darktrace. I know you guys do too.
Yep.
For your network level monitoring, that's packet level monitoring of the entire network. Then below that, you have kind of user access control, user account control. Think in the Microsoft stack as yours PIM for just-in-time privileged access and user account control of the same ilk. Then below that, you have conditional access. That's your rules for logging in general. That's what will prompt you for multi-factor authentication, which is a topic we'll come on to shortly. And also set rules for geographically where you can be and what risk you can have while trying to log in. As we mentioned it, on MFA, You should use it. There's no excuse in the modern day for not using it.
Yep.
And it just makes it stupidly easy with password-based attacks when you do not. Microsoft have a solution for it. As you know, Microsoft Authenticator on your phone, and hardware keys are available as well to use. Then finally, internal controls are a big thing. So this is dictating exactly what your company can do, regular audits, checking what you actually have on your network, and making sure they comply with whatever your internal standards are, which should be defined as and when you make changes.
Okay. Talking about standards there, one of the reasons that you're here is actually to help our clients build their strategies. So we're offering fractional CISO services because having a DAN is a big investment, well worthwhile, but our clients can have access to a slice of a DAN, right? And actually you can help them with that analysis around what their strategy is and gap analysis. And actually it ties nicely into the assessment service that we're bringing to market. And we have two versions. There's kind of the light version, if you like, which is essentially free for our clients to get a good snapshot of, I guess, at a high level state of the nation. Are there any obvious ones that we can resolve? And then a real deep dive under the bonnet, what's going on to that level as well.
On the first one, the kind of basic one, the free one, which I have had the pleasure of slightly reviewing earlier today, and absolutely not just before this podcast started. They offer a few little things on there. So first we'll go through your Microsoft estate, assuming you have the correct licensing. We'll tell you what's there. Look at your security score. Make sure that you're doing all the things that you can be doing at this point to try and remain as secure as you can. Following that, we'll go down and look at a few other small bits, such as some external attack surface vectors using a tool that we have. Any previous compromises using, again, another tool that we subscribe to. Pop all of those in a nice big report to give back to you. At the end of that, we'll also do a kind of a readiness assessment to see roughly where you are, and if you're able to move into our SOC at that time.
Okay. And I guess from a deeper dive perspective, there's other kind of audit work that you and the team can do around, the whole pen testing piece and red team activities, and that real, I guess, knocking on that door a bit harder and not necessarily moving on at first and actually testing those security measures.
Absolutely. So that's kind of a 0 to 100 thing, depending on where you want to be on that. We can either just tap on the door, and if it doesn't open, go, well, that's all right then, and walk away. All the way to kind of the other end of the scale where we get the kind of just get in, within reason, we don't mind how you do it. We're looking to sit somewhere in the middle of that, and that's what I've been doing for you guys as a contractor for some time, where you've had me break into some really weird and wonderful places.
Some very interesting
and
places.
I've been crouched in some really dirty corners that I intend to never go back in. Where we provide a full report based on that, along with some recommendations and obviously the expertise internally to help you resolve anything we find.
And I think that's a real good takeaway for the viewers of this podcast is that you're here to help us really supercharge our security offering, bring an enormous amount of experience to the table, and we can do some of this interesting things. We can deploy down to some dark corners of the world and make it slightly uncomfortable, but I think it's a really good evolution of our service, actually having someone of your skill set that can really put some of these things to the test, because you can go and invest in technology. And there's lots of it available. And I guess it's also sometimes difficult to see what's the good or the bad because there's so much technology out there. But ultimately, it comes down to how well configured and deployed that is. And actually, have you put it to the test to make sure it's correct? And doing that audit, that gap analysis, and pushing the door and seeing how much it opens, etc., is key to giving our clients that, I guess, that secure feeling that actually they've done a good job.
Even beyond just the feeling, it also forms the basis of supplier audits when you get asked. Have you done a pen test? Have you got X standard or Y standard? The pen test report will form part of that, which you can either share in a redacted form or not, depending on your preferences, to show that you have done something that problems were mitigated if they were found. Likewise, if you're going for any of the big kind of certifications in the area, ISO 27001, Cyber Essentials, either normal or plus in the UK, as well as several others elsewhere in the world, pretty much all of them will require some kind of pen test report to either get or to provide assurance, and that fills that gap too.
Dan, very interesting. I'm looking forward to digging into a few more things as we get into this, and actually it brings me to a good point of, if you'd like Dan to cover anything specifically, then please leave that in the comment section below, and we'll be sure to bring that into future episodes.
Cool. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Chromecast. Check it out. Remember to like, subscribe and share, and join us again next time on Chromecast. Check it out.